Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show. So welcome to the episode of the Spring Break Check-In. This is Greg, the Single Guy, and I'm so sorry that I've got Kent in a weird mood tonight, and I've got JP Mint down in Mexico, so we are all coming at you live. Well, you know, not live for you. It's recorded for you.
You know what? I got to check myself. This time of year is, I don't know. This is the time of year. If I'm going to say something really stupid to someone, it's usually this time of year, because at the end of the day, I'm just tired, slightly cranky. It's like working all day with kids that are just like, with people who are
I told JP
angry.
you're a little grumpy. What? I told JP you're a little bit grumpy, but it's to be because it's the end of the year and you've got like...
It's like having a stand-up comedy routine with an audience that does nothing but heckle you all day. They just,
right. Right.
Hey, you're sucks it out. Throwing their drinks at the microphone.
I saw a video meme of somebody straddling like kind of like a dam or something, and there was water in one trough and water in one trough, and it was like floating. And the guy was doing this from one side to the other, and it was just floating back, and he was like, "Teachers in May."
Oh yeah.
Like just trying to tread water.
Or you see that owl that's bedraggled. Another one.
Bedraggled, yeah.
Okay,
For the ITP
I just
crowd,
turned you guys down
I know
now.
this is radio and not television, but JP Mint and I couldn't help but notice that our co-host, Greg, the Single Guy, is rather bedraggled today. Just an appearance. I would like to go live. I bet the ITP crowd would love to see us streaming live, unedited, as bedraggled
Let's
as
see
you
some
are.
feedback first. We want some feedback from our crowd, though, before we do anything live. So we need to hear back from our crowd.
You know what? JP Mint, I know this is radio, but she is the most presentable of the hosts. She is coordinated, most days showered. I don't know if I can say it.
Most days, not every day.
The hair is done, and and today the earrings and the dress match. And I'm sure we're going to hear the story about that.
Well, I just think it's important, to take this seriously and not come with half-shaved.
Not just half-shaved, but half-dressed.
Wow, this
half-dressed.
is just lash out at Greg.
Thank goodness the top half is, but we don't want to comment on the rest.
Wow, when did I become the target? I think ever since
you are always
ever since
the target.
JP got in charge.
Well, we were here last night waiting for you, to be fair.
Mm-hmm. Crickets. 10:50.
We're calling,
I called
we're
you.
both
Ken
calling
called you.
I'm knocking on your door, throwing rocks in your window.
Welcome to the episode where we make fun of Greg, the Single Guy. And
so what happened? Did you fall asleep on the couch?
You can reach out if you want, and you can leave some comments about Greg and how bedraggled he looks.
You took a nap and you fell asleep.
See, some of us work, you see. And,
which one of us is that?
I came home. I think it's JP. I came home from work and I just crashed. I was asleep, and Matt will attest to this. I could sleep through a hurricane. I mean, once I go to sleep, I'm out.
That's what Kent said. I said, well, maybe he's just taking a nap. He said his naps become nights. Like it's just one night. Long
I could
night.
sleep like 24 hours if I didn't have some kind of a watch to wake me up.
All right, well, you're up now, so we'll take full advantage of that. Hey, what are we talking about today,
this
JP?
episode?
Hey, so I thought maybe our listeners would like to hear about our recent spring breaks because I think we all went somewhere. And this is one of the advantages of teaching and living overseas is that the world is a bit smaller. It just feels like, hey, let me hop on a plane and go over here. Whereas, let me tell you, a lot of my friends that have gone back to the home countries, either States or Canada, they save up for 2 years to have a vacation somewhere exciting like Italy. This is what I have heard because of, smaller salaries and bigger expenses. they have to actually save their money for 2 years to be able to do that dream trip to Tuscany and wine testing. But we, as livers of overseas, livers? As residents of overseas,
My liver is pretty much cashed.
I know, what the heck was that? We get to like just hop on a plane and go. And I don't know if that's because we have a lot of our expenses paid for, or is that because we live in cheaper places like me in Mexico? But anyhow, I think we went everybody?
Yep.
It's just part of the best kept secret in education, JP. That's if I know. So I heard that somewhere.
It's
That's just really. It's part of the.
Oh!
It's part of the education.
www.amazon.com or wherever you find your finer books. International
go through an
Teaching,
episode
the Best
without-
Kept Secret in Education by Gregory something Lemoine, PhD, MD, MMPH, FD, ASPE.
I like the way you said Gregory something Lemoine.
I think it's
No
S.
clue
S or is it
whatsoever.
M?
I think it's Gregory S.
There's a space. Well, there's
Men-
just
What,
a space.
what is tell the ITP crowd what your middle initial is?
It's H for Huff Har, just like it
It's
sounds.
Hufflepuff.
H-U-U-R-R-F-R-F.
We now know your Harry Potter house. Hufflepuff. That's the one I would like.
I can't put that out on the web. You know, I mean, I've been listening a lot about security and stuff. I'm
password.
afraid
Yeah,
that
I
someone,
didn't ask if your ATM
someone might
code.
jump in and listen and find out my middle name.
No,
My
I asked just the
God.
first initial. But now,
My first initial is G.
wait a minute. No, that's for Gregory. You're
Stands
not
for Gregory.
Gigi. That
yes,
would
that's
be
my
cool.
first initial.
Gigi,
No, you
Gigi
asked me what my
Lemoine.
first initial was.
I have a feeling a lot of this is going to be on the editing floor in just a little bit. It's
Oh,
like,
no,
cut,
we're not going to edit all of this. No way. We're going to let it run.
All
JP,
right,
you
so
wanna-
I
Yep.
went somewhere. Did Greg go somewhere? Did Kent go somewhere? Find out, folks.
Okay, I went
I did
somewhere.
go somewhere too.
Kent, did you
Yep,
go somewhere?
Thank you. Next topic
Okay, cool.
after, right?
All
Yep,
right,
we're done.
that's it. What's our next one?
Where'd you go, JP? You start us off.
Okay, I will start us off. I was asked back in October at a round table filled with Mexicans and who wants to go to Colombia in the spring? And I immediately put my hand up and I looked around and I was the only one. So my friend and I took off to Colombia this spring. Our first time ever in South America, both of us. And I did a lot of research, interviewing of friends. I have friends that live there. And in fact, one of our previous guests, Chris Lang from the ITP crowd, shout out to Chris in Bucaramanga.
Bucaramanga.
I got to go see him. Yes, I got to see Bucaramanga. I got to visit lovely wife pal, who would be my best friend if she lived in this city. And I'm trying to get them to move here. I don't know how
I'm
that's going to
so
be possible.
jealous. I wish I could go to Bucaramanga. I'm going to go to Bucaramanga.
Bucaramanga.
Bucaramanga. So his wife is Chris's wife, Paula. She must be Colombian.
She left when she was a kid, and she grew up in the States, in Florida. And my friend who's from Texas attested that she sounded like a Floridian when she spoke English, which I don't know. What does a Florida accent sound like? You guys?
Greg's the
anything?
one who's.
Just south of Georgia.
That's the sound. That's a thing. That's a
Okay.
sound.
Yep.
Quick
Just
shout
south of
out, as long as
Georgia.
you're talking about Colombia, not to horn in on your story. Quick shout out to one of my nieces, who's half Colombian and has been working out with the Colombian softball team. So she has aspirations.
Where is she living?
They're up in Seattle area, but she travels
Oh.
around. She's got some invitations. Being half Colombian, she got an invitation to work out with some of those players, and she's real excited. So shout out to one of my nieces for that.
Nice. Is she going to get to go to Colombia?
I believe she's been there a couple of times already. Her grandparents are there, so yeah, and they love it. Colombia is absolutely
I loved Colombia. Full disclosure, I wasn't already totally settled with my 87 million boxes. I would be moving to Mexico. Colombia. So full disclosure, if I didn't have 87 million boxes to pack and move furniture, I would be on the next plane or boat to Colombia and moving there, because that was such a beautiful country, such friendly people, and they are just excited to have tourists. I think after so many years of whatever it's called, I don't think it's called civil war or anything, but it was like the war on drugs, some
Strife.
strife. They had strife in their recent past, but since then, the country is opened up. Their arms are opened up. I went through this one neighborhood in Medellin, and it was considered the most dangerous city in the world in the 80s and 90s. This particular neighborhood was the hot spot of that problem. I started walking through there with a tour guide, and an old man came out and he said, "Bienvenido." And I was almost brought to tears, just like he was so happy. Obviously, foreigners walking through his neighborhood. And
By the way, that's welcome in Spanish,
yes,
Ken.
welcome. And I just felt welcomed in the whole country. Wherever I went, people were happy to see me. It wasn't like gringo go home. It was, arms open wide. And so I can't speak enough about how people should be getting on the plane and going and visiting Colombia before people discover this secret, that it is an amazing country. It is super affordable. So you just need to get on a plane, and then you can live unbelievably well and stay at really nice hotels, or as we did, Airbnbs with air conditioning, because it was just a little warm in some places.
JP, you've sung the praises of Guadalajara, Mexico on our program here. What is it that Colombia, what is it there that makes you think, you know what, this really could be a future home?
Well, I always look at a few things. The people are really important. If you feel welcomed, if you feel like you could be part of the society, and then that's really important to me. I've lived in countries where you don't fit in. You are ostracized, or you feel like you're always on the outskirts or the outside of society. That's not a good feeling overall. So I'm able to say that this place, I just felt like I could really fit in quite easily, quite quickly. Of course, it helps that I'm a fluent Spanish speaker. I don't know if you go to Colombia with just a few scratching words of Spanish, if you would have as good a time, because the English just hasn't quite hit there. They're getting there. There's in tourism, there's a lot of English speakers, but restaurants and things like that, it's mostly Spanish speakers. The other thing I look for is affordability. And, as a semi-retired person, I'm looking to see where can my dollars stretch the most. It sometimes was Mexico. Now, Mexico is cheaper than most countries, and now you think half the price in Colombia, like it was extremely affordable. And then finally, I look at the environment, like what am I going to be able to experience day in and day out? Beautiful green trees. I love the greenery. Really nice moderate temperatures for the most part. And a little bit of rain. It was the start of rainy season, and so, but it wasn't like rain all day. It was rain at that sort of sunset, when the pressure has built up all day for the heat, and then they just release, and it's like 1 hour of rain and your day around that. So I guess those are the three things I look for: is hospitable people, hospitable environment, and affordability.
I like the parrots.
The
The green parrots are flying around.
Yes.
In Venezuela and in Colombia. It's a rainforest type. It's just amazing. You look up and there's this full-fledged green, cockatoo, or not cockatoo from Australia, but the green Amazon parrots. They're all over the place.
What do we have here, Greg? We got green things flying overhead. I assume that
those were former pets.
An expat. Yeah, it's an expat community of
just
of
let the bird. They're too much work. Let them go. No, down there they're actually wild. That's where they catch them and bring them.
Well,
from
Colombia actually has
Venezuela.
the most diverse number of birds in the world. So they have, I don't even want to quote, but something like in the upper 100 species of birds.
Are we talking about like birds of prey, just
Everything.
about everything tropical?
Everything.
Do they have like the vultures and the
I did
hawks
see
and
some,
falcons,
and I
all
also
those things as
saw
well?
a whole lot of hummingbirds. It was the first time I've seen
Cool.
more than 3 hummingbirds in one time, and it was this one particular flowering bush at a coffee plantation. And the hostess was saying, "Did you notice our hummingbirds?" And I went, "Did I notice? I thought I was being swarmed by bees." And then I realized, no, that zzz was hummingbirds. And there had to be about 10 or 15 in this particular like flowering bush. The purple little flowers they loved.
So
So you yeah.
well, I was can I piggyback on that? I'm not talking Colombia, but right next door is Venezuela. And while I was out in the middle of the Orinoco, which is at the top of the Amazon River basin in the north, and it was amazing. I look up, and on one tree, there are 7, not just 2 or 3, but there are 7 toucans. Like wild.
Toucan
And I mean,
Sam.
the last time I never saw a real one unless I was in a zoo or on a cereal box, right? And there's 7 or 8. I'm sure there's probably 8. There's probably 25 by now. The story's getting better. But there were 7. I have a picture of 7.
And what were they
toucans on one
doing? Just
tree.
all hanging out like on a clothesline sort of style?
Didn't have a chance to interview them or anything. I just know that they were up there. I took a picture, and then they were sort of scared off, right? But the point
You want
is,
to make sure to carry your microphone around with you wherever you go now.
that was before I podcasted, right? But before that, it was just amazing. And that's just piggybacking off of what you're saying. The nature of Colombia, from what I understand, and it's very close to the nature that's found in Venezuela in the jungles, is amazing. And I agree. I'm so happy that you mentioned that because I miss the green jungles. I miss that kind of the people too. I mean, the people over in Venezuela are awesome. So that part of South America, the northern part that I've had experiences in, has been unbelievably wild. I love it in every sense. Mark Weber was on here before as a guest, and I missed out on that one. But he gets excited when he talks about South America and Central America, and I do too. And part of it is the nature, the birds you see, the jungles, the huge leaves, the plants, the rainstorm that comes down in the afternoon just drops down on you, and then it's gone. And then there's the heat again. It's amazing.
Well, I just can't get over how the people are so welcoming, and yet they've been rather isolated for so many years. You could go one of two ways, kind of the curmudgeon, like, get out of my country. Why are you invading my country? But no, it's the opposite. They're like, oh, thank you for coming, welcome. And that's what I want people to understand. Like, grab it while you can, because you don't know when it's going to flip. If they're going to be like, after all, I kind of liked when we were a closed country because there's going to be an invasion soon. I already met one of those retirement centers. They're more and more, I want to say like expats, or I call myself an immigrant here in Mexico because I've immigrated. But, there are more and more immigrants or expats coming in, and for affordability, they're moving into Medellin, which is just a city than Bogota. Bogota is quite huge. It's very high up in the mountains. I had a headache almost the entire time I was in Bogota because it's 3,000 meters or something crazy like that. Like it's very high above the sea level. And but when I got down to 1.6 or something kilometers, and so or 1,600 meters, it's not that much. Very nice temperature and just a little bit more compact, so you can feel like you can get around a lot easier.
So how many days? Tell the ITB crowd, how many days did you get to
I was there
visit
for 12 days, and I got to see 4 regions. So the beautiful thing also about the affordability of Colombia is that they have these small airlines that will do, I call puddle jumping. They'll do these little short flights. That I never took a flight that was longer than an hour, and it was 50 way US.
Is that Avianca or is that something else?
Avianca and LATAM. Shout out to those 2 airlines that are making inter-travel very affordable. So we went from Bogota to Bucaramanga to go see Chris and meet his wife Pau. And then we also took a bus to Barichara, which was gorgeous. And I want to spend more time there. It was just this picturesque little village of, I don't know, like 20 streets, a block, like a grid. But all the houses were painted the same, like all white with the terracotta roofs. And it was just so picturesque on the side of a mountain. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And then took a flight, $50 flight to Medellin, 45 minutes, you're there. If I had driven, and it is possible to drive all over Colombia, but driving would be 8 hours of harrowing mountainous highways. And I don't want to do that. So it was really easy. Medellin, we stayed 4 days. And then we flew to the coffee region, and that's less mountainous than I was picturing. I was picturing like absolute jungles, but in fact, it's like pockets of jungle or pockets of mountains. But the coffee is, as you can imagine, unbelievable and amazing. We visited a couple of stations while we were there, plantain gardens and farms. And then we flew back to Bogota and flew out to Mexico City. So it was a very quick trip, but what I was able to determine was that I will be returning. I will definitely be returning. I want to go see the coastline, Cartagena, where Shakira's from, see if I can, couch surf at her place for a little bit. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go back to Colombia.
So for Colombia, biggest city, Bogota, capital, second city, maybe Medellin. And what do most people do there? A lot of farmers, a lot of industry. What did you see with your own eyes?
Well, Bogota's being the capital, I think, is probably the most industrious with a lot of the international companies being located there. Lots of skyscrapers and things like that. Medellin, also industrious, but I don't know how much and things like that they have on the outside. It's very mountainous. The entire country of I should say the northwest corner, which is what I saw of Colombia, because it's actually a huge country. I saw probably 30% of the country, and 70% is like Amazon, real jungle, southeast. But in the northwest sort of north corner, it's very mountainous. So they are building up on the sides of the mountains. And what I learned from Medellin tour is that the higher you go up in the mountains, the poorer you get. And simply because of the public transportation and getting into the city center where the jobs are. So that's why for so long, the mountainous neighborhoods were quite dangerous because it was quite isolated. In the recent years, they've been building these sky cables or like funiculars to connect, and they're system. So, you get on line 1, and line 1 isn't a train, it's a little gondola that brings you, and then there's several gondolas, of course, 2, 5, 7, I don't know how many, and they get you up to those mountainous neighborhoods. So now people can get in and get out quite easily. Has brought in safety, but there's still regions that you definitely want to you definitely want to do a tour.
A couple things I won't do, Greg and JP, and judge me if you will. I'm reticent to go on those small prop airplanes, particularly in mountainous
The ones
regions.
with the rubber band through the ceiling?
The ones, yeah, they got a little duct tape on them if they got enough money for the duct tape. I'm a little bit reticent for that. I'm also reticent for those cars that, the cable. The chair lifts, the cable cars, things like that. It's not really my thing. Miss Cat will plan our vacation, and she'll plan for herself to go up on those things, but she'll leave me behind.
Yeah, I have a fear of heights, so I'm not crazy about those things either. But sometimes you just need to hop in.
This is strange because Kent went on a vacation too, and what I know definitely is that he was in Switzerland for a time, and they went on some very mountainous, beautiful, scenic trains. Did you get... I know you can get into your story a little bit, Kent, but what about the height of the trains going around, and you look down and there's these beautiful valleys and you got snow-topped mountains? Were you scared then?
Trains I'm okay with. I'm okay with trains.
Different feeling.
I enjoyed the trains. We got the Golden Pass. We did that. We went up the Alps and all that. And so that was a real highlight for me. And I got no problem.
Kent, was this your first time in Switzerland?
Well... yes, it was. And I don't know if I'm rushing to get back. Maybe Miss Cat would like to go back. It was beautiful. I felt like I saw what I wanted to see. But for us, we we were 2.5 days late getting to Switzerland. We had planned for 9 days on the ground there. We were going to Lausanne. We were going to the mountainous regions. I forget the name of the region where we went to there. Interlaken, maybe.
And you've got to tell the listening crowd why you were late by
Hold
2.5
on, I'll
days.
get there.
I
I'll
love
get
that
there.
story.
And 3 days in Basel. We flew through Dubai, and Dubai had the flooding during the spring break. It had a massive amount of rain. It rained on us here too, where we're out here in the desert. But Dubai got absolutely drenched. The airport shut down for a number of hours just before we flew in from here where we're at, and it was utter chaos. We were about 8 hours late landing in Dubai than our ticket, and we're only an hour away, right? And so we get in about 8 in the evening, and chaos has broken out in the airport. There's no employees to be seen. There's people sprawling about everywhere. It looks like the New York Stock Exchange with people just holding their tickets in the air, screaming at the universe with nobody to respond. And so we finally found something that looked like a desk with a person behind it. We don't know if they were an employee or someone volunteering
Or just
their time.
doing some remote
waited
work
there
on
for
their
about-
laptop.
Just volunteered, yeah. We stood in that line for about 14 hours and finally decided that no one was actually working the desk. So we took a break, took a nap, found another desk where it looked like someone was working, and spent another 8 hours maybe in that line before we finally got to the front of it. And I will say that it was a painful experience, not just for standing in the line. I think it was a painful experience for everyone. Because you couldn't go back. You couldn't get back on your plane and go home, and you couldn't get a ticket to get out of the airport, so you had no choice but to stand in whatever line you could find. I would say anger, frustration ruled the airport. Nobody got hurt, but certainly a number of times tempers flared. 2 quick stories for you that I found slightly humorous to break sort of the tension at the airport. A shout out to Mateo. Mateo is a 19-year-old kid who, he's kind of funny. I think he's French, living in Thailand. He was heading to Bangkok out of Dubai. And he was there in the airport for at least 12 or 14 hours before we got there. And I don't think he got out for another 24 hours, just to give you an idea. Anyway, his luggage is lost in the ether somewhere. He's got one pair of pants. He's got all the clothes are just on his body. He gets out of the line to stretch it out. You know, he's stretching, and his one pair of pants, he splits the butt of the pants, stretching outside the line. Oh, Mateo, I am so sorry. So somehow he was able to procure a pair of shorts, and it looks like he's on a spring break on the Miami beach with his flip-flops and shorts, because all his other clothes were gone, including the pants that he just split. Mateo, I hope you got home to Bangkok, buddy. Asher is a pensioner from Britain, older guy. Probably, I don't know how old Asher is. Shout out to you, Asher. He's flying home from he's got a house in South Africa, flying through Dubai, going home back to the UK. And he was standing in line. He's like, "Can you help me get on the internet here? I want to text my dad." And I'm looking at Asher. Asher's got to be 70. I'm like, oh my gosh, how old is your dad? And in the best fashion of the British, he says, well, he's getting on in years now. And he pulls out his phone. He says, can you get me on the internet? And I look at the phone, and this is the phone people used before flip phones.
The little
existed.
Nokia with the AAA, BBB, CC.
That's
Candy
exactly
bar phone.
what-
Yeah.
And I said, Asher, I don't think that thing goes on the internet. So I gave him my phone to text his dad, because he didn't want his dad to worry about him. And poor Asher was worried that he was worried that he'd be stuck in Dubai. He tells me he had an ATM card, but he hadn't used it in 8 years. I don't know how you get by in the UK. He's like, does this thing come with a pin? I don't know. I'm like, oh, Asher, please.
How did you get from South Africa to Dubai?
And the kicker is that he was supposed to fly on BA directly from South Africa to UK, but they wanted to charge him an extra £600, and he didn't want to, that was just too much for his pensioner. But it cost him probably more than that, honestly, to spend all that time in Dubai, probably 24 to 48 hours. And I don't even know if he made it to London. They were flying people to Manchester, for heaven's sake. I don't I don't know where they were flying people. So it was an absolute mess. And probably you'll never see anything like that in a lifetime. Greg tells me I got off easy. Greg tells me he was talking to some of the people who work in the Dubai airport, and they had it much worse. I mean, they couldn't get to work. They couldn't get home from work. The local transport system just had an absolute meltdown. And these poor men and women who work in Dubai were trapped in some cases in subways for hours and hours and hours, packed to the gills. And so I guess in some ways you could call me the fortunate one. But that was, I think our vacation got off to a terrible start. We were delayed probably 2.5 days.
Well, you can't plan that, Kent. I mean, that was a global, once in a lifetime. I mean, in 100 years, they hadn't had that much rain. And Dubai is an island a desert island. They had so much rain, more rain in one day than they had an entire year. So all of that had nowhere to go.
There's no sewer systems.
Sea level.
There's no sewer systems.
They're at sewer level.
If there is a system, it gets
everything was
overwhelmed.
flooded.
I will say that.
And your listeners can go back and on that day, look it up on the net, and you'll see airplanes going through puddles of water from gate to gate. I don't know why they're driving around.
Well, and then people would think that, as soon as the water clears, it's back and running, but it had backlogged so much that it spent days and days and days trying to get people to various it probably took 3 or 4 days even after the water receded to get everyone out of that airport. And so, I guess that was the real story of our spring break. We did enjoy Switzerland. I tell you, I'm someone who likes to eat. I like a good glass of wine, and I struggled with the food in Switzerland. It was sort of
heavy.
It was a heavy,
cheese,
very German heavy in the places that we went
sausages.
to. And people, it's more beer oriented, which is not a problem. I do enjoy that, but I think at that point my mood had just kind of, I was just exhausted. And our first stop was Lausanne, and we were supposed to be there for 3 days. We get there at 9:30 at night. We're checking out 8-9 hours later to go to our next stop. We never gained our footing. I know that Miss Cat was very disappointed by it. Maybe one day we'll go back. But as for now, we have to just sort of, hang on to what was beautiful about it. Like I said, the train rides into the Alps. I don't know how people do it. There are people on the train who have just ski boots on and carrying skis. I don't know where they came from. I'm not sure where they're going. I mean, we got snowed on in April, and I'm like, you can wear shoes and then switch to the ski boots. And they're like, no, we're good. We just wear the ski boots.
They're just going to ski right off of the train.
Amazing, they're just going to ski right off the train. I don't know what they're doing. But, it was nice. I mean, people were nice. We had a good time. Ish.
I miss Switzerland. I should have gone back to Switzerland.
I did promise Miss Cat that you would take her there and show her the real sights one day. So we'll see.
ITP reunion in Switzerland.
Much has changed a lot.
Woohoo!
All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all 4 of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITP Expats. That's with an S. ITP Expats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank all of you for listening. So let's get back to the show.
What do you think, Greg? Greg, you had a pretty exciting time doing the thing that you love, which is not shaving, but it is something else.
Get off the shaving thing. You should have seen me. I was like a lumberjack. Takes me like a week to grow a beard, though. Yeah, Maldives. It's a small country that people have heard about. From north to south, it straddles the equator. And it's south of India, but it's on the east coast of Africa, out in the middle of the ocean. It's in the Indian Ocean. So that's your geography lesson right there.
Is it near
Capital
the
is Male.
Seychelles? Is that something?
It's north of the Seychelles,
Okay.
so you could go from north to south. If you start up in India and you sort of let your mind wander straight south, it goes Maldives and then Seychelles. I think Mauritius is next, and then it gets to the movie. What's the name of the country with the movie?
Madagascar.
Madagascar. Couldn't think of the word right there.
Gotcha.
I know it's that big country down
And the sarcastic penguins.
and the Mexican penguins.
Well, that
right?
helps. That really
They're
does help.
They're from Guadalajara, I think. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we go from. That's just sort of like a general idea. I mean, along that east coast of Africa, and they're out in the middle of the ocean. But those are the 4 countries I can think of that people go traveling to. There's Zanzibar off of Tanzania too, right? But Maldives, yeah, it's atolls. It's beautiful, crystal clear waters, and diving is the biggest industry there. I spent 2 weeks there. I basically go with the same company every time. I fly into the airport, take my shoes off as I get on board the small dive boat that goes out to the 90-foot ship, and the ship goes along all these islands, and the dive boat follows it. It's basically all inclusive. You pay for a week or so. I went for 2, but you pay for a week, and you dive every day. You wake up, you dive, you have breakfast, you dive, you have lunch, you dive, you throw some naps in there. And I spent like 30 hours underwater. It's my thing to do. I love it more than anything.
Okay, so I have some questions because I did a snorkel trip
I knew you would.
in Thailand. Maldives Islands, I think they're called. It was a smaller boat. I don't think it was 90 feet by any means, but you didn't have a room per se, like your own room. It was bunk beds, but like quadruple bunk beds, 4 in a row, the length of the boat. And then you just basically slept in there. But because it was so warm, us actually slept under the stars outside on the deck, and just brought the mats from our beds and slept up there. Is that the kind of boat as well that you're sleeping in? I'm trying to picture what kind of room you had.
You're picturing like the dive trip where you're at the Days Inn. I'm talking about the Ritz.
Ooh.
This liveaboard, and like a lot of liveaboards I've been on for diving, I had my own cabin.
Wow.
And usually you have 10 cabins, usually on most of these bigger ships. People know about words like aggressor. That's the name of a liveaboard company for diving. And they do it all over the world, right? But this ship, it's called the Carpe Vita, I was on. And they have a 90-foot vessel, but it's like a 5-star resort. There's 10 cabins for divers. There's 20 divers, so there's 2 per cabin. We didn't have as many divers, so I had my own cabin to myself. Everything is 5-star. They take care of all your dive gear. The smaller boat follows you, and it's just for diving. And then all 20 of you are guests on the ship, and the ship has a galley. It has every meal you could think of. It's very international food. There's usually a fish and a beef and some kind of vegetable dish and lots of pastas. And
Is there a dining room to eat in?
We sat on the stern, the second level above the motors. They have a restaurant-style bar, and you have a place for 20 or 24 people to sit at tables, and they have banquet-style buffet for everything.
Ooh.
Wake up in the morning, go diving, and then you get up there and have breakfast or a cup of coffee, and you're overlooking Crystal Bay, or you're looking over another island. They usually dock in one of the bays at night and anchor off. And then in the morning while you're having breakfast, the captain usually starts up the engines and goes to the next dive site because you're going from island to island to island, right?
If I may interrupt for a minute, Greg and JP, I have to read a statement from a new sponsor. This episode of the ITP is brought to you by Days Inn. Days Inn, the luxury accommodation with something for everyone. We're not the Ritz, but we're close. I'd like to thank our new sponsor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kent. I've stepped up from the days of living in Honduras or living in certain parts of the world where I had to just get into a truck and drive 3 hours, go out in a boat, dive once or twice, drive back, boat back, dive back, and it's, then go home and go to sleep and do it all over the next day. So this is a dive trip, which is like the Cadillac version where you
Greg,
dive every day, right?
tell us what you saw on this dive. I mean, you're a big diver.
Yeah.
The ITP crowd will know that you've probably spent, is it fair to say thousands of hours underwater? Is that a fair statement?
I don't know if thousands. I don't count. But
Hundreds.
a lot of dives. Let's just say a lot of
What
dives.
did you see this time that was a highlight for a veteran diver like yourself?
Great question from the audience. Kent's right on, though. I mean, there are some things that you go to the Maldives to see, and one of them is just the schools of fish because they protect their waters from fishing, the big fishing industry. So you're not going to you'll have smaller fishing vessels in their waters, the local Maldivian fishing boats, but you won't have the big nets and the big Chinese or Japanese fishing vessels that have long lines. So schools of fish are just, the reef fish are amazing. Number 1 and number 2 draws in the Maldives are going to be the whale sharks and the manta rays. So they have migration patterns that go through that area. Beautiful, beautiful. We saw all of that. I saw the mantas. I saw the whale shark. We had lots of sharks. They have gray reef sharks, black tip reef sharks, white tip reef sharks on every dive. And that's really what you see. An amazing place to dive.
Is there any danger with all these sharks in the water?
Well, I would say that there's danger for the sharks that they're going to get caught by some fisherman or killed by some human because sharks don't go after us.
Okay.
They might go after Kent or me, thinking that's a really tasty meal, but
That's a good.
no, not to be grave or anything, but
They see seal. When they see Greg and I, they think seal and slightly wounded.
yeah. So basically, they will not go anywhere near you, JP. Anybody that's just afraid of sharks, divers usually have to pay extra money and pay a high price to go somewhere that has sharks. So the answer is no, there's no danger in any respect. There's so many divers in Maldives now, and that's one of the negative things. It's become very popular. Their airport has quadrupled in the last couple of years. There are so many divers now that it's the sharks are just saying, we don't want to be here.
They're like, gringo, go home.
Exactly. But that's some of the things that you'll see. And I don't go snorkeling, but people that go there with their families and stay on these island resorts, it's very expensive to get there. It's like 15 hours from the States, actually 20 hours from the States to get there. But when you get there, if you're a diver, it's a paradise. And if you go on a liveaboard, it is probably, it's top 3 in the world to go to the Maldives. It's, in my opinion, it's absolutely
So
wonderful.
tell us about your packing skills, because are you having to take all of this? Can you rent it there?
When I go diving, I don't take anything down there with me except the essential scuba gear and a swimming suit or some Thai fishing pants. So when I pack for this, I don't bring shoes. I wear what I have in the airport. Is the only real official clothes I have. Otherwise, it's just Thai fishing pants. Because I don't wear a wetsuit. I wear a swimming suit with Thai fishing pants and maybe a T-shirt on every dive. That's me because it's 80-degree water, right? 81, 82 degrees for the water. So I don't wear a wetsuit normally. So I pack very lightly. I'll go with half a suitcase.
What are
I'll go
Thai
with a
fishing
suitcase that's full of
pants?
dive gear.
Are those like the pants with the... That's what I'm picturing right now.
Can't touch this.
I'll let you Google it. It's basically a pair of pants they have like a little drawstring on them, and you just fold them over, but they're one size fits all. So it looks like it's not MC Hammer where they have the cuffs down on the ankles or anything like that. I'll let you Google it, though. Thai fishing pants are very comfortable.
I'll be honest with you. One size fits all is a lie. When you're me, you hand me at a massage or a doctor's office, you hand me one size fits all. Pretty soon, you've got 2 pieces of it because I've ripped it in half.
You need to find out about Thai fishing pants, Kent. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Greg, what you said, and JP, this might be interesting. In the future, I wonder, particularly with a younger crowd, if eco tourism, our sort of responsibility to the environment, our responsibility for travel. I wonder if that becomes a thing that people talk more and more about in the future, particularly international teachers who have access to lots of places and lots of travel. I know that Miss Cat and I have talked about the last couple of years, of course, after we've been to 50 countries, we talk about it. But
I hope so.
Either one of you think of, Greg, you said, you know what, sometimes you think about the environment, the whale sharks, the crowds that they draw, and you kind of think about, is that how you fit into that picture? JP, responsible travel, is that a thing?
Greg,
What do you guys
go
think?
ahead.
The diving tourism is all about don't touch anything, don't take anything, just take pictures and memories with you. Don't leave anything, just take everything that you take down there with you, you bring back. So it's sort of like the other kind of tourism, but it's very important in diving is that you're taking care of yourself and you're not touching anything, right? And I think the more and more divers that go, it's crazy, but hopefully the dive industry promotes that. The dive group that I went with, they're very eco-friendly and very aware and share and have rules about stuff, right? Don't touch this, don't touch the animals, don't scare them, let's leave no mark. And that's the dive industry overall. But Maldives survives because of tourism. Their industry of tourism is based on that. They're trying to keep their waters clear. Ecotourism is their industry. Right. And before I say anything else, I do want to mention one really other thing that I missed out on for this discussion, especially, is it's the most international place that I ever go. My experiences there are completely international on the vessel and every time I go there. So you have so many different countries represented on every trip that I go on. I'm one of the few Americans that usually goes, and then you'll have probably 5 or 10 different countries represented for the divers, and then you have 3 or 4 other countries represented by the people that work the ships.
So that it's not just Maldives nationals that are working on the ships.
No, the Maldives nationals are the dive guides and the captains and the mechanics. The rest of the people that work there are from the Indian subcontinent, so they might be Sri Lankan or Bangladeshi, right? And those are the two that work in the company that I go diving with, right, with the Carpe Diem vessels. So it's wonderful. I just thought I'd throw that in there for the crowd. It's what I love more than anything is sitting around a dinner table with people from 10 different countries, and there's only 20 of us, and we're being served by people from 3 or 4 different countries in advance, right? Multi-languages. But tourism, sorry about that, sidetrack. Ecotourism is a huge topic when you go diving, and especially in the Maldives. They're trying to keep that very sacred, right? Anyway, how about Colombia? How about ecotourism?
I don't know, to be quite honest. I mean, I can imagine that my carbon footprint is quite big from this trip, being, 4 different airplanes internally, and then the Mexico Colombia airplane. But my mind was, what if some of these coffee plantations we went to, what if they had that ability to live there for a few days and actually pick some of those berries and see the process of making coffee? I think that could be really interesting. That any of these coffee plantations we went to have that. I didn't see that option. We were definitely wanting to find an eco lodge, is what we were calling it, and it was really hard to find something where the carbon footprint's a little bit less, and where we could be supporting not only the local economy, but the environment. And we ended up just staying at an Airbnb because we couldn't find that option. So I think it's still in development.
Those are popping up all over South America, at least in the north of South America. I know in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of eco lodges. I've been to probably 5 or 10 different overnight stays at different kinds of eco lodges. I think it's getting some footing. Do you think more people are talking about it though? I mean, some of the younger tourists, some of the younger travelers.
I mean, I would think that it's something that's on everyone's mind, despite whatever their age. They just want to be more responsible, as you say, responsible traveler, and not just the tourist that takes and doesn't think about what they're leaving behind in the form of a carbon footprint, or in the form of, I mean, I was trying to recycle everywhere I was going. There wasn't a whole lot of recycling going on, but I just felt like, well, even if I just separate out my trash, the Airbnb host can decide, oh yeah, no, we recycle bottles or cans and things. But you want to leave the place as good or better than when you came. You definitely don't want to encourage the whole downgrading of the environment simply for dollars. What do you feel? Have you had an experience with an eco lodge or eco travel?
I'm trying to think. We're just starting. Miss Cat and I are starting to talk about this. For a long time, we lived in Washington State, and down the road from us is the travel guy, Rick Steves, and he's been talking a lot about it, having seminars, writing some articles about it. And so we're just starting to think more and more of what we leave behind as travelers, what we add to places. And I just think that the future, and particularly the younger travelers, probably are more aware of it than perhaps some of us older travelers. So no, we're just starting to become more smarter travelers.
I tell you, from the diver point of view, every time I go diving, we have what's called a BC, which is our buoyancy control device. It's a vest, basically, right? So put in layman's terms, and it allows you to become more buoyant or less buoyant. It's just sort of think of it as a life vest, and we take it down diving. Well, these have big pockets in them, and when I go diving in most places, I'm picking up trash. And I've dove around the world. Even in Borneo, I was picking up diapers and piece of plastic and old things that critters are not living in. If it's a bottle, I won't touch it because usually there's something living in it. But trash, real trash, just pick it up from either passing ships or if it's from the mainland or whatever it is, trash underwater. I usually fill up my pockets. Maldives does not have trash underwater. That is clean, and knock on wood. But I don't go looking for trash in the Maldives. I don't have to. And it's a real shout out to the Maldives. It's very expensive to get there. It's very expensive to dive there. Maybe it's just because the divers are more cognizant. Maybe the Maldivian government is more cognizant, the divers overall. Maybe it's their culture. But the trash underwater is not there. It is in other beautiful places of the world. You're picking up trash. So anyway, that was just a little caveat back to the dive. You guys got me hooked on the diving. So,
Well, I have a question.
Well, it's your passion.
I have a question for you guys. As a teacher, and especially a teacher of languages, I look for opportunities to encourage the locals to practice their languages. So, if I find out somebody speaks French, I'll switch to French. There's children around the world that have said hello to me because they want to practice their English. So I had one of those experiences with a mom who was running her own restaurant in a small, former dangerous neighborhood, but now open to tourism and very excited to have people restaurant. And she had her little girl in a school uniform behind the bar, and I was talking to her, asking her very simple, easy questions in English, and just getting her to have a positive experience with the language to encourage her to keep going. And I asked her, are you learning English in She said, no, mostly in Duolingo. And then she showed me her Duolingo, and I showed her my Duolingo. And then we got to, kind of show each other the languages. She was also trying to learn French. And I thought, this is a little girl who was 6 years old, now almost getting trilingual. And she's learning from a very young age that languages are a door that will open so many other opportunities. Do you guys have that experience where you're mixing with the locals and trying to get them to practice their languages?
I went back to Florida for my Christmas vacation. My father, local in Florida now, he, this is sort of jokingly, but he's got like 8 languages on Duolingo. I'm like, wake up one morning, he's learning Hawaiian because they want to go on a Hawaiian trip. Next day, he's learning like Italian, and he's got Spanish on there so he could talk to the people that come and work around the yard and stuff in Florida. But, it's so funny. To answer your question with more seriousness, I think that it's important to always talk with locals, especially if you know their language, to reach out about the English, and those apps are fantastic. So I'm right with you on that 110%.
I'll tell you, Greg and JP, I'm always worried that someone's going to ask me, well, what is the past progressive? I'm always worried about grammar questions that someone's going to throw at me, and I'm like, I don't really know that. I don't know.
I always,
maybe Miss Cat knows those things.
I always ask them, can you give me an example? Can you give me an example of that? And they're like, I have been walking for 3 hours. Oh, yes. Very good example.
Kent, it's the past that keeps getting harder and harder and harder. Just like life, that's the past progressive. That's all you need to know.
I tell you, JP, I'm happy to try to talk to people in any language. It's funny, my native language, I mean, I know some things about it, but I've had people who study English as a second language ask me all sorts of questions, and I'm like, I don't really know. But I do love language, and I had one student who showed up at our school, and she didn't speak any English, but she loved anime and manga, so we communicated in broken Japanese for a little while.
It's the effort that counts, Kent. If you take the little time out to speak someone else's language, it drops all the borders around people. It opens up a whole new world. So good for you, and keep doing that with her. She might turn out to be more like you than you think, and boy, oh my God, help the world on that one.
I'll tell you what, we're supposed to do no harm, so we'll see how this goes.
Wait, I thought that was doctors. Do no harm. Are we suddenly doctors?
Kent without borders.
This has been great to catch up over spring break. JP, anything else we want to talk about with our host episode here?
Well, I just want to tell our listeners that, this is one of the reasons why we go overseas. This is one of the reasons we head overseas to begin with, is to travel, to get to know other cultures, to learn other languages, to meet people from different pathways and different backgrounds. I would say for me personally, that was one of the top 3 reasons I moved overseas, was because of the rich conversations you can have with people around the world. I would encourage people to look into international teaching, because you get spring breaks like what we've had, even with the misadventures of the flooding in Dubai. You got to meet people in those lines and get to know their stories, and then see beautiful Switzerland. And Greg, with his 2 weeks back-to-back dive trips of meeting all kinds of the world, I think this is one of the gems of teaching overseas, is that we get to travel and know more about the world we live in.
We do it normally. It's instead of living back in the States, where I would go across a state line, hopefully for a vacation, and normally to the same place every time. It's normal for us as international educators to go and have a vacation that's somewhere across a national border, right? Internationally. If you sit down in our teacher's lounge in any school across the world, if you sit down in a teacher lounge and talk to other expat teachers on your staff, they're talking about different countries they went to on that holiday. And that's every holiday at some point, right? Do you write about it on your website, JP?
I mean, I've talked about the top 10 financial benefits of living overseas and working overseas. And then that kind of segues into, what do you do with all the savings, with all the money? But also you get to travel. But no, I haven't. I've been kind of lazy with my website and updating some articles. Right now, actually, I'm thinking of an article about transitions, because it's that time of year when people are starting to leave and thinking about what they're moving to. So that's... Ken, what do you feel about travels around the world at spring break?
We talked about it a bit earlier, and I think what makes traveling such a key aspect of international teaching is, number one, you're a heck of a lot closer to things than when you're in the States. The United States is huge. I mean, I could fly 6 hours to the United States and still be in the United States. Here I'm 4 hours away from Greece and Italy, 3 hours from Egypt, 3 hours from Turkey. 10 hours, 12 hours from Japan. We went to New Zealand and Australia. So international teaching oftentimes puts you much closer to the places you want to travel to. It provides you with enough economic sustenance to be able to do those things. And it's kind of the culture of international teaching. You're going to bond with your fellow international teachers through stories and travel, and it's a big part of what we do and we talk about. And so I definitely think it's a key part of the culture of international teaching, and we've been very, very thankful to have this opportunity. You've done it again. This is Kent the Cat Guy. I want to thank our future sponsors, Duolingo and Days Inn. I would like to encourage you to think about signing up for our future Patreon report, where you could hear the rest of JP Mint's prison story from Colombia. You can find JP Mint. Those are all made up. JP Mint never went to prison in Colombia, as far as we know. You can find JP. I'd like to thank JP Mint. You can find her at jpmintconsulting.com. Thank you, JP Mint. Yeah, I'd like to thank Greg, the single guy. You can find his newest book, International Teaching, the Best Kept Secret in Education, at www.amazon.com or wherever you buy your finer books. And I am Kent the Cat Guy. You can find me in room 402, gorging myself during Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you for your time. We will see you next week.
Gorging. I love it. Great job, you guys. And be underwater. Right. See you underwater sometime, Kent. Right. He won't ever be underwater.
No, I'm not a water guy.